Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen. General Langley, the presence of the United States on the African continent is not significantly military. In fact, we don't have any troops there at all, but we do have, until recently, a State Department and a USAID presence. Can you indicate to us how valuable that presence has been to you?
Senator, as you know, heretofore, we had a whole of government approach in some of the challenges on the African continent, and we used that in past years. Now, given that USAID and a number of capabilities are being folded under the State Department, we continue to look at ways to be able to leverage that in U.S. government pressure on especially our competitors in achieving our strategic goals.
General Langley, as we're considering Africa under your command, we have seen, I believe, an increase with the Chinese presence on the continent, economic developments, military activities, investments on the continent. Do you see, or what would you see as the greatest concern to U.S. security and also to regional stability in the area with regard to the actions that we are observing with the Chinese?
Sir, I see three lines of operations by the CCP. One, from geostrategic and their basing initiatives. As you well know, Dorley in Djibouti is their first start, and as the chairman talked about in his assessment. Then also other basing initiatives across the continent of Africa. Then their geopolitical line of effort in trying to dislodge the overall leadership in their quest to be the regional hegemon, as we start to look at their activities in the UN and trying to get geopolitical advantage over the West. And then also geoeconomic. They treasure critical minerals. They need those critical minerals, not only for their defense industrial base, but also for their greater industrial base. Those lines of efforts are what we're watching closely because they want to be the global hegemon.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to General Cavoli and General Langley for being here this morning and for your many years of service to the country. I want to follow up on Senator Reid's question about USAID's presence in Africa, or lack thereof, now that this administration has closed down virtually all of the operations in Africa. This is the fastest growing continent in the world. It is a place where we're seeing increasing incursion by the Chinese, as you pointed out. So as we have withdrawn our presence from countries in Africa, are you seeing additional Chinese presence come in to take over some of those services and programs that the United States has been providing? For example, in Rwanda, we had a program to help with children, women and children, and the challenges of childbirth. My understanding is that now that we have left that program, that the Chinese have come in to take it over. Are you seeing that in places?
Sir, I am seeing that. There's a number of programs that we see that the Chinese Communist Party is trying to replicate. They can't do what we do. They can't do what we do in PEPFAR, where they extended the lifespan of a number of Africans by 20 years. They're trying to replicate that. They're trying to match what we do. So that's what we're seeing as we start to fold in the capabilities of USAID under State Department. China's trying to exploit that scene.
And do you agree that it would be a huge loss if we don't continue many of those programs?
Senator, I won't speak to the policy part of that, but it is a need. Those capabilities are needed for the U.S. To maintain a strategic advantage over the Chinese Communist Party because we do it best. And the Africans, they speak that they do prefer the United States.
But General Langley, let me just follow up for a moment. As we dial back USAID in Africa, China's not dialing back the Belt and Road Initiative anywhere in Africa, are they?
Chairman, China is responding by trying to replicate what capabilities USAID was very successful across a number of years. They're trying to replicate that, whether it's in health diplomacy or any development type programs. They're trying to use that as extension of the Belt and Road Initiative to gain favor by the African countries.
And they, would you say it's not principally altruistic on the part of the Chinese communists?
Chairman, I'd say that they've made some missteps in the last couple of weeks, especially in Zambia with that spillage into the river that affects 5 million people. So they're getting a horrible start using a track analogy.
But they do it in their own self-interest, the Chinese.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. And Senator Cotton, you are now recognized with the apology of the chair.
Gentlemen, Michael Langley, the Trump administration has conducted multiple airstrikes against al-Shabaab targets since taking office. What's your current assessment of the threat that al-Shabaab poses to our national interest and specifically to the U.S. homeland?
Senator, al-Shabaab is especially a heightened terrorist threat, namely because they're colluding with the Houthis across from Yemen. And so we're watching that closely. The President and the Secretary of Defense has given me expanded authorities. I can talk about those details as far as expanded authorities, but I will say we're hitting them hard. I have now had the capability to hit them harder.
Okay, al-Shabaab is in the Horn of Africa on the East Coast. There's obviously other terrorists operating throughout Africa associated with al-Qaeda or the Islamic State. What's your assessment of the threats that all those terrorists on the African continent pose, and again specifically pose to the U.S. homeland?
Senator, left unchecked, they will have a direct threat on the homeland, whether it's just their networks or even their ideology. We remember 1 January 2025, what happened in New Orleans. Still, there are some that have been indoctrinated by this false ideology of Islam.
Okay. General Cavola, coming back to you, outside of your AOR, but I think perhaps with some follow-on effects, the Assad tyranny fell late last year. That has imperiled Russia's access to its naval base in Syria. There have been reports that Russia is looking to replace that base elsewhere in the Mediterranean, including potentially in Libya. How do you assess the situation in the Mediterranean and Russia's access to the Mediterranean since the fall of Assad?
Senator, they've suffered a big loss. They've suffered the ability to maintain sustained maritime operations in the Eastern Mediterranean. It's much more difficult for them now. They are searching, and I'll let Mike talk about this if you'd like to, sir. They're searching for alternative basing to replace Tartus, which they've mainly lost on the north shore of Africa. They've failed so far to achieve a long-term agreement for a major base. So this will be significant. It's significant not only because we have a reduced presence of submarines, Russian submarines in the Eastern Mediterranean now. It's also surface vessels that find it harder to do sustained operations. And finally, it's much more difficult for Russia to sustain the operations, both overt and covert operations that they're doing in Africa without those bases. And the Alliance and U.S.-UCOM are both taking actions to try to make sure we keep them boxed.
General Langley, anything to add?
Yes, Senator. I watch the Maghreb closely. Russia does have initiatives because that is NATO's southern flank, from Morocco to Algeria and even Tunisia and Libya. I engage with them closely for shared objectives of denying the militarization of NATO's southern flank.
That the Pentagon is considering combining AFRICOM and EUCOM into one command. And for both of you, what is your best military advice on the strategic, operational, and resource implications of such a merger? General Langley?
Senator, I won't speculate on the evolving policy, but I will say this. I'll just give comparison of the relevance of AFRICOM and our mission. Back in 2007, when we were stood up, we looked at the challenges across the globe, and especially the challenge of terrorism. At that time, the global presence of terrorism on the African continent was 2%. Senator, today it's 43%. And then even adding on to a geostrategic type of perspective of our great power competitions, both Russia, Federation, and the Chinese Communist Party activities on the African continent is grand. So my responsibilities are great. So for a combat commander, it would be a daunting task.
It is an American soldier is a hero standing still. And I looked it up. It is General Patton that gave us that quote. Can you talk, because you mentioned something about the convening, really the convening ability of our United States military. Can you speak to that, please?
Yes, Senator. You know, as the Chinese Communist Party and even the Russian Federation are trying to encroach upon what we do as far as influence and cooperation with our African partners, they pale in comparison. You know, as evidenced by what we do in our conferences that we hold, or moreover, the exercises we have, whether it's Obigami Express. All those countries, a number of countries in the 40 plus, are always wanting to be part of it. Same thing as far as our Express series, and we get our maritime members because of the illicit activities that China is doing in IEU fishing. All those qualities and shared objectives gives us a convening power and influence on the African continent. There's no better type partner that the Africans can have in the United States.
No, thank you for that.
Good morning. Thank you, gentlemen, for your service and good luck after retirement, but you're not done yet. General Langley, AFRICOM has historically suffered from shortfalls in manpower and ISR and security and all those things. Sounds like from your testimony that Africa's in trouble. 40% rise in terrorism. What's your most pressing need that you can tell us for what we can help you with?
Senator, thanks for that question. My number one operational priority is protection of the force. And so as I stipulated in my opening statement, I focused on matching capabilities to the threat. When we match capabilities to the threat, it first calls for integrated air missile defense, and it calls for ISR. And other platforms would add to the capacity and capability of protecting the force. In closed session, I would be able to elaborate with more specificity, but all combatant commanders always ask for those aforementioned type platforms.
Yeah, thank you. General Cavoli, how much closer?
Let me ask a few more questions here as we hopefully recess. Africa is a mineral-rich, resource-rich continent. Is that correct?
Yes, Chairman.
Okay, and you can leave the microphone on. Which are there success stories for the citizens of African countries when these larger, more prosperous nations or companies from more prosperous areas come in and exploit these minerals? What I'm asking is, does it ever redound to the benefit of the citizens there in Africa?
Chairman, there's very few cases. When the Chinese Communist Party is outed on them pulling out raw materials, not benefiting the populations of the host country, they've been trying to come up with ways how they can stay there and process only at the protests of the people of these African countries that host these mineral resources.
Okay. So is there any exception? Can you point to any success story where the people of one country or one or two countries have actually benefited substantially?
Not on China's behalf.
Okay.
Not on China's behalf. Just what happened in Zambia when they had the spillage into the river that services 5 million people. There's just these mining concessions. It just doesn't turn out real well for the African countries.
And do the countries that are receiving entreaties from the Belt and Road Initiative, are they more and more mindful of that now and therefore reluctant?
Yes, and that's where we need to be able to do information operations to illuminate some of the irregularities and some of the malign type activities of the Chinese in African countries.
Information and narratives are power then, aren't they?
Absolutely. And as I said a few minutes ago, and I always will tout this, that we own the facts. We own the facts. We know exactly what the Chinese Communist Party is doing, and to some degree what the Russian Federation is doing in their propaganda operations. But we don't own the narrative. Both of them own the narrative.
We sure don't. One more thing for you, General Langley. The approach that we have had with USAID and the other things like the President's Initiative on AIDS, how does our U.S. approach compare and contrast to the approach of Russia in Africa and also Communist China in Africa?
Oh, Chairman, we've always had the lead. So what you're seeing in those two competitors or challengers, they're following in our wake. They see what works as far as our influence in deepening partnerships through those soft powers, whether it be health diplomacy or whether it be in development type programs. So they're following in our wake, trying to replicate what we do best. And I think the African countries know this, and so this is where, as we start to look at going forward, as State Department starts to reset these programs, looking at what worked and what didn't work, and doubling down on what does work. I think we have enough capital built up in these countries for them to ensure their stabilization and also prosperity. The other two competitors are just trying to replicate what we do best.
I can imagine a situation, though, in which the ruling elite of a country is receiving gratuities on the side that inure to the benefit of the strongman leader and not to the populace of the country. Does that sort of corruption and bribery go on with regard to the Belt and Road?
Absolutely, Chairman. I see this, and I don't mind calling them out, but Captain Traoré and Burkina Faso, as they know that both, whether it's their gold reserves, that is all those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime. There's a number of examples across. Even in Sudan, what's going on with the rapid support forces and Burhan of the Sudan forces, when you get down to it, is all about the revenue that can be drawn out of that. And there are nefarious actors in the CCP or in sometimes Russia are complicit in those activities.
Okay, well, you can't imagine how frustrating it seems to me that this mineral-rich continent has not been able to move to a utilization of the resources to benefit the people there. After all this time, it's a puzzle that we haven't unwound. Let me see.
Have you had specific comments from any of your counterparts about the withdrawal of USAID from Africa? Have they commented to you like, why are you doing this, or?
Ranking Member, thanks for that question. I went to the Munich Security Conference about a month ago, or greater than a month ago, and after I got my direction from the Secretary of Defense, what my priorities were, especially counterterrorism and also to deter China and their military activities on the continent, it kind of refined my mission. Then I had to come up with my narrative to engage these countries, be very transparent and straight talk of that we're going through the pause and we're in a reflection period of assessing what has worked in the past and what's going to work in the future. And what's going in the future will be more targeted to what their needs are, but they also need to be able to build towards a sense of independent operations. I expressed this and talked to Cote d'Ivoire, their MOD, and even in Ghana, the new president-elect, President Mahama. They understood that and also carried on that narrative. They appreciated me being transparent. Carried on that narrative when I went to Morocco as well, when we delivered the helicopters, and they understand it. And so it's more of a burden sharing type message, and also a regimented message of getting towards the host nation coming to the point of independent operations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you, Mr. Ranking Member. This concludes the open portion of today's hearing. I'd like to thank our witnesses for their testimony. For the information of members and staff, questions for the record will be due to the committee within 2 business days of the conclusion of this hearing. We will commence the closed portion of this hearing in Senate security at the hour of 12:10, 10 minutes past noon, and until then we are recessed.